Hi, this is Kokido, and welcome to another Through the Ages video. So I will record my next round World Championship video soon, I promise, but to get back into the swing of things, and because I think it's an interesting game, I thought that first I would record a video of my game in the Australian Open third round. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with the Australian Open, it's a pretty interesting tournament format. 256 players enter, and everyone plays a single 4-player game. And the top 2 finishers in that 4-player game move on to the next round, and the bottom 2 are eliminated. And that format continues round after round into round until at the end you have a single 4-player game among the top 4 finishers, and whoever wins that is the champion. So so it's an interesting format because while you obviously would prefer to win if possible, what's important is to finish first or second. Like, second is infinitely better than finishing third, because if you get third, you're dropped. So you're really aiming to just finish top 2, at least until the final round. And obviously, because it's a single game, there can be some wild upset finishes. Actually, in this year's Australian Open, Irene and Weidenbaum, 2 of the best players in the game, both lost in the first round. So definitely anything can happen in this tournament. As for me, in both round 1, as you can see, and round 2, I finished second. So I'm sort of barely managing to scrape by through the tournament so far, but round 3 is definitely going to be difficult. So my opponents in round 3 are Dazzy, Little Squirrel, and Wandering Wolf. So you can see from the Gleeker ratings, Dazzy is 38th. And is the favorite in this group by a fair amount. I'm sort of tied with the Little Squirrel, although it should be noted, Little Squirrel is actually undefeated in tournament games up until this point. This is not a spoiler, by the way. The Australian Open third round has not been added to the ratings website. So this is not a spoiler as to how this game goes, but the point is this is our ratings before that game, and as we can see, Little Squirrel has 0 losses. Now, they have only had 27 opponents, so not many tournament games in general, but still 100% win percentage, very impressive and scary. Wandering Wolf is perhaps the underdog in this group, but again, with 1 game, you never know what might happen. So without further ado, let's take a look. In this game, I'm playing third. We can take a quick look at the leaders and wonders. So in age 3, we have Morlena plus Hollywood, so for some theater synergy, but it's very specific. We have more internet synergy with Sid Meier, Pierre, and Einstein, and Marie Curie a little bit. There is a Red Cross, but no ocean liner service. A Manhattan Project also exists notably, as well as Pierre for arenas. In age 2, again, no ocean liner service. There is, however, the other 3 major wonders in Suez, Railroad, and Harvard College. Suez in particular is notable because James Cook is also in this game. There's no Watt for Railroad, however. There are all 3 military action leaders, that being said, as well as Newton promoting scientific methods, as well as Bach to perhaps transition into Marlena. In age 1, we have 3 powerful wonders. Machu Picchu, I think, is also strong, just more situational. Most of the leaders probably like being elected early. We do have Columbus and kind of Barbarossa as transition leaders, but the others kind of prefer to be elected earlier, so that's also notable when it comes to choosing age A leaders. Wandering Wolf plays first, takes the pyramids. I think that makes sense. It's probably the strongest card out of these 5. Dazzy has a choice between Hammurabi and Confucius, and notably chooses to take Confucius, so Dazzy seems to value Confucius over Hammurabi. I think that is justifiable, but I was also happy to see this myself because it gives me the Hammurabi plus Stonehenge combo, which I think is an extremely strong combo. So there are maybe, you could maybe consider that engineering genius, but I just think this combo is so strong. Hammurabi kind of makes Stonehenge into the best AJ wonder almost, so I think there's little reason not to take it, especially since with Hammurabi, one thing you can do is you can elect him, build a mine, increase population, and then you have 2 civil actions left with which you can take these, usually an age 1 card on the 2 civil action row that you'll want. So, I mean, not always, but anyway, Hammurabi also, like, you usually don't have to take an AJ yellow card with him on turn 2 is my point, so I think there's a little reason not to take that. Little Squirrel takes Aristotle as well as engineering genius and the urban growth, chooses to pass up the Hanging Gardens. I think that, probably makes sense. I mean, it's not the best AJ wonder. Probably Little Squirrel is looking forward to maybe Roman roads, or perhaps one of these strong age 1 wonders. On the other hand, Dazzy also hasn't taken a wonder, so Dazi will get first dibs onto the Roman roads if it's there. So it's maybe a little risky to take the Engineering Genius without having a wonder you know for sure you can use it on. On the other hand, probably Little Squirrel will get one of these strong Age 1 wonders, and Aristotle can also support spending resources that's not on a wonder, because he can get tech with them. So I think that's justifiable. Age 1 begins. Wandering Wolf builds a mine, increases the population, and takes Homer. That, I think, makes sense. Homer is a very strong combination with pyramids. Unfortunately, can't elect Homer yet, but Homer is a leader. Obviously, you don't need him immediately, so I think that's fine. Just a little civil action intensive. But that's alright with pyramids. Dazi elects Confucius, builds a mine, increases the population, and takes the frugality. Notably values the frugality over the urban growth. I think that's a little unusual evaluation, but so just I don't think it's wrong necessarily, just interesting to me. Anyway, because we can see that unfortunately the only Age 1 cards are currently in the 3 civil action row, but fortunately there's one that is two that are very valuable to me. This Monarchy and the Iron, we haven't revealed it yet, but these 2 cards will not be as good as the Monarchy and Iron. So I think this turn, I mean, I could possibly elect Hammurabi, build a mine, increase my population, and take like an urban growth and a cultural heritage, but I think that's definitely not worth it. I think that even though they're available for 3, these 2 cards are so powerful, especially getting them early, that it's worth getting one of them. Question is which one. Now, I think there's an argument to be made for each. An early Iron is obviously always strong, especially in this game where we have the strong Age 1 and Age 2 wonders. Because I have the Stonehenge, I can potentially build a 3rd mine this turn. And the next turn I'll have 2 science. I can build a lab, for example, and then the following turn I'll be able to build 1 stage of the Stonehenge to get my 5th science, which will let me play the Iron really quickly and start upgrading it. So I think when you have Stonehenge like this, an early Iron is even stronger because you can, than it usually is, because you can get it a turn earlier. That being said, with Hammurabi, an early Monarchy like this is also extremely strong, because you can do an early revolution to it. So I think both the Monarchy and the Iron here would be justifiable. Getting each of them this early in my position, either of them would be very strong. In the end, I decided to go with the Monarchy. I think that, partly because it's just a rare card, and partly because I think getting the Monarchy early is even stronger than getting the Iron early. Because if you think about it, if I got the Iron, I would have to wait 2 turns before I played it. Whereas with the Monarchy, I can potentially set myself up to do a revolution next turn. And I think getting a Monarchy revolution on turn 3 with Hammurabi is possibly one of the strongest things you can do in 3 Ages. I think that's even stronger than, for example, getting Iron upgrades going on turn 4. Especially in my position where I have Stonehenge, right? Because with Stonehenge, I need civil actions and I need civil actions for Stonehenge, and I already have some with Hammurabi, but Monarchy gives me even more. The Stonehenge will also give me enough science that I can comfortably play a Could Have Lost to go along with the Monarchy and have the Monarchy really last me a very long time. So just overall, I think it's, even though the Iron would also be very strong, the Monarchy is even better. Knights, I think, not really worth considering among these 2 when I haven't even drawn any cards yet. I also elect Hammurabi and build a mine. And I draw a cultural influence. Little Squirrel elects Aristotle, takes the Iron that I didn't, makes sense especially with Aristotle, and builds a lab with the urban growth, is looking forward to getting those Iron upgrades going soon, potentially even next turn if they take another technology or something. So, although they won't have enough resources to upgrade the Iron next turn unless they have help in developments, but they might because, you know, they'll playing last, so they'll be potentially at least 1 from Confucius, probably 2, maybe even 3. So, I think this turn makes sense from Little Squirrel. Wandering Wolf Seeds reveals its development to civil life. I was very happy to see this. It'll make it even more likely that I'll be able to do a revolution without corruption. There's a second copy of Iron, as we can see that Wandering Wolf takes for 3 civil actions. On the one hand, I can't understand this. As said before, these early Irons are very strong in this game. On the other hand, even with Pyramids, Wandering Wolf we can see is getting pretty civil action intensive. with Homer not replacing the civil action when you replace him. So that's a little notable, but I can understand wanting this early iron, probably more so than the Knights, which again, especially if you haven't tried a tactic yet, getting an early Knights is a little not questionable, because Knights is still a strong technology, obviously, but I can understand valuing the iron more, even for an extra civil action, and spend their last civil action increasing the population. Unfortunately, it means they go into consumption early, but they probably better than taking these AJ yellow cards. Dazzy Seeds with Confucius reveals the development of agriculture. So I forgot to go into it, but on my turn, I had set myself up to do a revolution and get out of corruption if no resource events were revealed. So a little risky, especially playing against Confucius, but I also figured that, you know, I could potentially wait a turn for the revolution and it would still be fine. But in this case, because I had the events of civil life, as we'll see, I'll be able to get out of corruption even while doing the revolution. Anyway, Dazzy builds a second lab, takes the second copy of Monarchy, so both copies of Monarchy gone really quickly. I think that does make sense, especially with taking the Roman roads, which is a good wonder, especially with this early monarchy, that Dazzy should be able to support with Confucius. So this turn makes a lot of sense, in my opinion. I see no reason not to do the revolution. Obviously, I'm not seeding because I don't want a resource event being revealed. I mean, there are potentially some reasons not to do revolution. There's Saladin available, who's a strong leader, especially this early in Age 1. A lot of power cards being revealed early in this game. Knights is another potential card, although it's the first copy of 3. So there are maybe some reasons not to do revolution, but overall, even though, you know, Saladin may be the main reason, but even though Saladin's a powerful card, I think there are other powerful Age 1 leaders, and it's just doing the revolution this quickly when I can get out of corruption by increasing my population with the development of civil life and then building a lab, I just think is way too strong. I draw rats in the bonus card. Little Squirrel Seeds reveals the development of crafts, so very good thing I didn't seed. This does enable Little Squirrel, who played the iron with the development of civil life. Those extra resources do enable Little Squirrel to upgrade this iron mine immediately, which is strong for them, obviously. Increase the population to get out of corruption, and takes that copy of Knights, valuing it over these leaders, particularly Saladin, notably. But Little Squirrel's probably comfortable just staying on Aristotle for most of Age 1. Wandering Wolf Seeds reveals the development of markets, so lots of resource events in a row here. Wandering Wolf is able to finish Pyramids, finally elects Homer, and takes Saladin. Unfortunately, we can see a cost of the civil actions that Wandering Wolf played. 2 on Homer, 3 on these iron, means that Wandering Wolf is missing just 1 civil action to elect Saladin. So that means that those civil actions mean they're missing 1 civil action next turn, so just notable. I'm not saying that Wandering Wolf's play was incorrect. I think it all made sense, but, you know, paying these heavy civil action prices can compound in this way, so an important lesson to keep in mind. They also build another warrior. Probably the event deck's looking to flip soon, and they don't want to be weakest. And also, actually, probably more importantly, to spend the Homer resource. Dazzy Seeds reveals the development of Settlement. And spends their turn finishing Roman roads. That is a good play, in my opinion. Probably none of these cards are worth passing up, just getting this finished. I do see the rats. Even though I have 7 food, I will be spending all of it this turn. I will have just enough, 2, 3, 6. Why will I have enough? Now I'm confusing myself. I think there's... Oh, because... Right, because of development of settlement. So development of settlement will move this to 3, and I'm going to be taking food with development of markets. So I'll actually be able to pop 3 times on my turn and go down to 0 food. While my opponents, as we can see, Little Squirrel has 6 food, Wandering Wolf has 4, Dazzy has 7. So I thought that the rats was a very potentially powerful card for me. So I definitely wanted it on the deck. I revealed the event of planning, and I made an interesting choice with this, as we'll see. My choices were development of warfare, trade routes, and politics. And I ended up choosing... Well, normally, I can't do Defensive Warfare because I don't have a free population, so it was between trade routes and politics. And normally you would pick trade routes because it gives you those resources that are very valuable, but I actually ended up choosing politics. And the reason is, as I was playing through my turn before seeding, I decided that it made most sense for me after popping 3 times again to take one of these military technologies. But I didn't know which one to take. I haven't drawn any tactics yet. None of my opponents have played any tactics yet. So it wasn't clear to me which one to take. So I thought the development of politics would actually be a good one to take for myself, because I was mainly looking to draw a tactic, and the tactic I drew would then be able to tell me which of these military technologies I wanted to take this turn. So I think also I probably had some corruption issues if I took trade routes, but I think the knowledge of getting a tactic that would tell me which of these cards to take was the more important reason. Unfortunately, I did not draw a tactic, as we can see. I did draw another bonus card, thankfully, which is nice, but I definitely would have preferred a tactic, but no go, sadly. I did, however, go with my plan, as stated previously, of taking food and increasing my population 3 times, so I would be down to as low food as possible for the rats that I seeded. Made it kind of obvious to my opponents that I seeded rats, but I thought that, you know, assuming my opponents seeded, perhaps, especially, you know, if Little Squirrel, Wandering Wolf seeded, then Dazzy would still be hit hard. My opponents also, especially Little Squirrel and Dazzy, and also Wandering Wolf, because they'll be replacing with Saladin and not getting the civil action back. They're a little civil action short, so they may have things they value above popping. So, even though I think this does make it obvious there's rats in the deck, I think it's still good. Anyway, that gives me 2 civil actions left to take, and again, I have to choose which of these cards to take, and I ended up, after building a warrior, just to make sure that I'm not weakest now that the event deck has flipped, I took the knights. I think that just in general, when you don't have a tactic telling you which one to take, you can still use infantry tactics with warriors. It's not ideal, but you can do it. But you can only use, obviously, cavalry tactics if you have the knights. So I was thinking I might have to depend on a tactic from my opponent, and so I figured if they play an infantry tactic, I can use warriors, but if they play a cavalry tactic, which Little Squirrel, for example, might with the knights, I really wanted the knights. And also if I draw a cavalry tactic, obviously. So that's why I think when in doubt, knights is better than swordsmen. This is a little bit of an interesting pick, taking Leonardo when I don't have an alchemy in my hand. The reason I took it, though, is because we can see 2 irons are gone, taken by Little Squirrel and Wandering Wolf, and Dazzy plays right before me. So I thought that probably odds were that Dazzy is going to get the last copy of iron, because Dazzy plays right before me. So I thought that most likely with all 3 copies of alchemy in the deck, I should be able to get an alchemy before the age ends. So I thought that I could just exist on Hammurabi for most of age 1, and then switch to Leonardo when I get an alchemy. It's a little bit risky, but again, odds are that I'll be able to get it, especially since, like, I know I want it. My opponent's value is less since they have irons, so I think Leonardo is probably fine to take here. There's not necessarily a leader that, you know, Columbus, I don't have a column in my hand yet. Nostradamus would be good, obviously. Barbarossa, maybe, although both irrigations are on the row right now, and my opponents might take them, so Barbarossa's might be a little questionable. General could be fine, but I think that Leonardo is a very strong Age 1 leader. He's one of my favorites, obviously, even though you need alchemy or printing press with him. I still thought it was fine. I also didn't necessarily, I mean, theology maybe, but I have a happy face from Stonehenge. I wasn't worried about happy faces at the moment. So another reason was I didn't see a much better use. I mean, I could just build 1 stage of Stonehenge, but I was also kind of looking to get this masonry, especially with Silk Road being on the row. I was thinking next turn maybe I could take masonry, play it, finish Stonehenge for 2 civil actions, and then take Silk Road. That was looking to be a very strong turn for me next turn. And so I didn't necessarily want to build any stage of the Stonehenge before I could potentially use masonry. So I think that this is a risky move to take Leonardo here, but I think it's justifiable. As for discards, I discarded both of my strength events without any tactic in my hand. I think these would be too risky a seed, so I just took the cultural influence as a neutral seed. I kept Cultural Influence as a neutral seed as well as my 2 bonus cards, and I drew a Call to Arms. Little Scroll Seeds reveals the Dark Ages. I obviously didn't have knowledge of it, but it doesn't hit me, so definitely a lucky timing. This card is a lucky timing for me before I build any stages of the Stonehenge. Little Squirrel increases the population, is able to build a 3rd Iron Mine directly, and takes an Irrigation and a Swordsman, so it looks like Little Squirrel maybe doesn't have a cavalry tactic, which is unfortunate for me. Gets more science with Aristotle, obviously. Wandering Wolf elects Saladin, plays Iron, it builds 1, increases the population, and takes the 2nd copy of Irrigation after all, and builds a 3rd warrior to become strongest. Dazzy Seeds reveals a wealthy territory. I was willing to bid on this. I think that I can rebuild the warrior if I want to, and I have these bonus cards. I don't have knowledge of any other colonies in the deck, so I saw no reason not to bid 3 on it, which is enough for me to win it. I'm also a little short on rocks at the moment because I didn't get those irons, so I was happy to win this colony. Dazzy plays Monarchy, builds a 2nd warrior, increases the population to build a 3rd warrior, takes Masonry, a little, I see this, maybe this is a hate draft against me because of just how powerful Masonry would be for me for obvious reasons, which is also understandable. And they also take Bread and Circuses and a Breakthrough. And they play a Legion tactic to become strongest. I see the Cultural Influence, even though I'm weakest. The main reason being I wanted to get the rats out of the deck potentially. My opponents kind of played around a little bit, but also not really. We can see they all have a lot of food to lose to it. So I definitely wanted to increase the chances. And also I wasn't planning to get much stronger during my turn. So there was no reason not to see it in fear of a strength event, because the strength event is going to be bad even after my turn. I do, after all, indeed reveal the rats though, so definitely very fortunate timing for me. The course of the first event deck has definitely been lucky for me. Anyway, even though I don't have the Masonry, I still do the rest of the turn I described previously of finishing Stonehenge and taking the Silk Road. With Dark Ages out, there's no risk in finishing the Stonehenge and having the science lying around. And Silk Road with Hammurabi plus Monarchy, plus I'm definitely planning to get Code of Laws later. I think it's just very powerful. When you have a lot of civil actions and not a lot of rocks, Silk Road is the one that you want. The more questionable thing that I do is, as we can see, I don't actually build another unit. I think the reason was I was looking forward. I was kind of hoping to draw a cavalry tactic still. I think part of it was that I was being optimistic they would draw a cavalry tactic. And in particular, if I drew heavy cavalry, then I obviously wouldn't want to get the 2nd warrior. I want to put these into 9th instead. So I think that was part of the reason. Part of the reason I think was also to maximize my draws, because like I said, I really wanted a tactic. I didn't want to have to use the Legion tactic when I don't know if I'll get the 2nd copy of Swordsman. So I think that's probably the major reason. I was just really hoping to draw a tactic, particularly a cavalry tactic, and I wanted to maximize my chances of drawing it. So I didn't build the 2nd warrior so that I would maximize my draws. Building the 2nd warrior wouldn't protect me from Dazzy either. Building a 3rd warrior wouldn't protect me from Dazzy. So I'm still able to defend against Little Squirrel and Wandering Wolf regardless, and Dazzy is still able to aggress me even if I build 2 warriors. So it wouldn't even help me with aggressions, and it wouldn't make me not weakest. Just building 1 and building 2 felt like a lot. So I think even though it's looks questionable to just stay on 1 warrior in this situation, I think maximizing my chances of drawing a tactic probably justifies it. And also, like I said, it doesn't make a difference for defending against aggressions. I don't draw a tactic. I do at least draw a bonus card, though, which will enable me to defend against a Dazzy aggression if they try it, as well as an Open Borders Agreement, which is always a nice card to have. Little Squirrel plays Swordsman and upgrades 2 to push their strength a little bit more, upgrades their last mine, takes the 1st copy of Alchemy that I didn't take last turn. Instead, I took the Silk Road, but I thought, even though I want Alchemy with Leonardo, there's 2 copies left in the deck, I was still fairly confident I would get one of them. And they play Irrigation with their last civil action. Wandering Wolf takes Knights. They also play Irrigation. Upgrade 1 is with mine. No reason not to upgrade farms now that Rats is out. And they also play their own Legion Tactics. So only Infantry Tactics played so far, sadly. And spends their last civil action on a copy of Reserves, which will enable them, for example, to increase the population next turn if they want to. Dazzy does not try an aggression, instead they seed. I guess another reason not to be too afraid of an aggression from Dazzy is when you have Confucius, you're incentivized to seed and not try an aggression. So that's also maybe a small factor. Anyway, they reveal a Confucius event. They play their Masonry, which enables them to build a Bread and Circuses for 1 cheaper, making them strongest. And they also take a Frugality, 2 yellow cards, Frugality and Patriotism, which they valued above these other cards, which is sensible. It does mean they miss out on these 2 powerful Age 1 wonders, but they also didn't get the irons, so they probably figured they wouldn't have the rock leeway for these wonders anyway. As for my turn, I did want to offer the Open Borders Agreement, especially, you know, with Hammurabi. Even 4 military actions is still quite strong, and just in general, having more is better. The question is who to offer it to. Dazzy is my only opponent who already had 3 military actions, so it would help them the least. However, Dazzy is also threatening the most strength right now, and I still was not planning on pushing my strength too much. So I think I didn't offer it to Dazzy because I was afraid that it would enable aggressions too much from Dazzy. So I offered it between Wandering Wolf and Little Squirrel. I offered it to Little Squirrel because they were threatening the least amount of strength at the moment. And I think they also were probably in a bit of a worse position than Wandering Wolf just because of Wandering Wolf's civil actions, although it's debatable. It was mainly, though, the strength, I think. I was just kind of, you know, scared of aggressions. The extra military action will also help me defend against Dazzy aggressions. I was happy to take this Code of Laws. I also built a Knight just to get a little bit more strength going, even though I still didn't have any Knight's Tactics. I was still optimistic that I would be able to draw one. Maybe at this point I should have cut my losses and just built 2 warriors and planned to copy the Legion tactic if I could. Maybe hope to get the second copy of Swordsman. But I also think just building Knights is probably okay. I mean, there's still a chance that they'll draw a cavalry tactic, so it's a tough position to be in this kind of situation where you just never drew a tactic. But this is justifiable, I think. I do also play the Code of Laws. I have the science for it. Really helpful with supports monarchy, helps with Silk Road. Did I? Yeah. So I think this all makes sense. Again, it's justifiable. It would be justifiable to build 2 warriors and plan to copy the Legion next turn. But if you also think about it, like 3 warriors plus Legion is 5 strength, and 2 Knights plus a warrior with no tactic is 5 strength. So the 2 Knights costs 1 rock more, but they also cost 2 military actions. Well, they cost 2 rocks more, but 2 military actions less, so it gives me more chances to draw a nice tactic for those Knights. So actually, I think that this is probably right. So I think all of these plays make sense. The question is what to spend my last 2 civil actions on. And I end up, well, 3 with Hammurabi. And I end up taking the Alchemy for this. This, on the other hand, is, I think, a much more questionable decision on my end. Now, obviously, making sure I have an Alchemy in hand for Leonardo is important. And I think I figured, well, do I really have that much better to do with my civil actions? I think the answer is yes, I did. I could have built 3 stages of the Silk Road with my last 3 civil actions. I think I was playing maybe a little too loosey-goosey, even with Hammurabi and all these civil actions. Civil actions are still important, especially when you have Silk Road, with Dazzy having taken Masonry, not knowing when or if I'll be able to get a copy of Architecture. I think just instead of spending these 3 on Alchemy, which it does make sure I get Alchemy with Leonardo, but also it's still only just the second copy. It probably was not necessary, and I could have maybe just, again, built these 3 stages of the Silk Road, just get it out of the way and make it a lot easier to build to finish the Silk Road in coming turns. So I think this was probably a mistake on my part, even though it is the safe play with Leonardo. I think that it was not necessary. I could have potentially even built 2 stages of Silk Road and then taken a printing press. Even though there's not really printing press. Yeah, there's not any printing press energy really in this game. It would at least give like an option for Leonardo. I have a little bit of free population, although maybe less than it seems once the age ends. So that was also an option, to build 2 stages and take the printing press. And I think even though it's a little risky, building 3 stages and just counting on being able to get an alchemy in coming turns probably would have been a better play. Anyway, I did draw a tactic. Unfortunately, it's an infantry tactic. At least I draw another bonus card. That's lucky. Little Squirrel takes Joan of Arc, Machu Picchu, and upgrades a farm. Chooses not to elect Joan of Arc yet. Even though it is a little bit of a risky play. After Little Squirrel's turn, there's going to be 11 cards in the deck. So even though that's a lot of cards, the other players all have a lot of civil actions, especially me. So Little Squirrel's being a little bit risky here. The age ending would be kind of a disaster for Little Squirrel, with losing Aristotle before he can be replaced and losing this engineering genius. So just a little notable, spends an extra civil action, Machu Picchu instead of Forbidden Sea, and well, Universal Last. Machu Picchu is obviously strong for Little Squirrel in this position, but so I can understand this play, but it's a little risky. Wandering Wolf Seeds reveals the barbarians. Dazi has the most culture and is the strongest, so nothing happens. Finishes upgrading their buildings and takes the Universal Last, Strong Wonder. Also, Forbidden Sea is about to be discarded, so it's like Wandering Wolf both gets a Strong Wonder and denies a Strong Wonder to Dazi. So I think that's the right play. Takes a cartography, perhaps suggesting there's more colonies to come, as well as a rich land. Interestingly, even though Wandering Wolf has already finished upgrading their farms and mines, perhaps the urban growth would have been better in this situation. But maybe Wandering Wolf is a plan for the rich land. Anyway, Dazi reveals the new deposits, which helps me the least out of every player. Unfortunately, at least Dazi revealed it before they were able to elect Isabella, so they get 1 less rock than they would have had with Isabella. Chooses Isabella over Nostradamus, notably, which also perhaps suggests that there's more colonies in the deck, or maybe Dazi just values Isabella in this position with not having iron mines, and maybe thinking that they'll have to upgrade to coal mines. They are also able to take the Taj Mahal for 1 civil action, having replaced their leader, and they also have enough rocks to finish it. So Taj Mahal, not only considered to be a good wonder, but I think this is actually a situation where it's quite good for Dazi, because Dazi had a lot of rocks lying around and not much to use it on. So I think this is actually a situation where Taj Mahal is at its best, where you get it for cheaper at the turn you replace your leader, and you have a lot of rocks lying around that you can just sink into it immediately. So I think this is a great play from Dazi. And they also take a rich land again, perhaps to help with a planned coal mine upgrades. It's my turn. I don't see it. I don't want the Cult of Arms in the deck, and I'm weakest. I think the only card I have knowledge of in this deck is the Cultural Influence too. Anyway, I perhaps like Dazi. I'm also thinking I might have to upgrade to coal mines. There is an iron on the road, but I am not going to take this one for 3 civil actions, especially because with Silk Road and with having this rich land, I felt pretty comfortable that I'll be able to get the coal mines going relatively quickly. I do, however, get these alchemies going. We can see that there was this copy of alchemy that none of my opponents took, so this alchemy that I took lasted for 3 civil actions. Probably would have been available for once. I mean, you can never know. Maybe the game would have been played differently. Maybe one of them would have taken it or something. But yeah, I think the way this turned out, and also this copy of alchemy is available for 2. So anyway, past in the past, I think this is the right play now. Get these upgrades going, especially with Leonardo. Get some good sense protection going to support, to be able to set up for coal mines in the future. I also build a second Knights. This at least puts me a little bit stronger than Little Squirrel. And I do choose to do 2 Silk Road cubes. I do have enough rocks to build a third, and then still have enough to, for example, build a knight next turn if I want to. But instead of doing that, I take a theology. Which, you know, when the age ends, I will have this unhappy face, and I don't have knowledge of rebellion, so I think this is justifiable from that perspective. On the other hand, rebellion, maybe not the end of the world when I have so many civil actions, and, you know, maybe I wouldn't have the leeway to build a theology for a while anyway. I have a lot of stuff to spend my rocks on, military potentially, Silk Road, I'm only on bronze mines, so this theology maybe is not going to be a useful card for me, especially because with the Stonehenge, I can just have this population lying around and happy for a while and be okay with it. So I think maybe in retrospect, this was a mistake, and I should have, again, I was playing a little bit too loose with my civil actions, and I should have just built another stage of the Silk Road instead. I mean, I was also thinking maybe I'll get architecture and I'll be able to build all 3 stages for one civil action, but that's speculative. It should be noted, though, that I did... But actually, on second thought, maybe this was the right choice, because we mentioned before, the age ending will be an absolute disaster for Little Squirrel, and I need to take 2 cuts from the row in order to end the age. And the theology is definitely, I mean, I can't take Barbarossa, and I think it is better for me than Theocracy for sure. So actually, from that perspective, because of how good it would, how bad ending the age would be for Little Squirrel, maybe it is worth it to take this theology just to make one of my opponent's lives significantly worse. So I think I take back what I said, and this is actually right. It was the previous alchemy for 3 civil actions I think was questionable, but in this case, this theology I think makes sense because of how bad it is for Little Squirrel to end the age. And with my last draws of Age 1, I finally draw a cavalry tactic, and even though heavy cavalry is usually a little difficult to use, I am actually pretty well set up to use it. I mean, this will be unhappy, but I can potentially disband a warrior if I have to build one. So definitely very happy to see this draw, even though it's late. As well as people mentioned, for Little Squirrel, Dazzy also was not able to use their frugality because of the rats that I seeded. So that was a little extra benefit of me seeding rats, and of rats being revealed when it was. Little Squirrel elects Joan of Arc, and plays Theocracy. I think, and the Theocracy also enables them to build a swordsman. So that's good. The Little Squirrel, I think, is also copies the tactic, right? So Little Squirrel is able to become strongest by doing this. So that does make sense to me. On the other hand, taking and playing the Theocracy costs 2 civil actions, which means they don't have enough to get out of corruption this turn, notably. Wandering Wolf is able to finish Universitas, so that's good for them. They also build a Knights and play a Phalanx tactic, so they're able to get not strongest, but second strongest, and they take the last copy of Alchemy. Oh, I forgot to look at the state of the game at the end of Age 1. So we're going to take a quick look here. I guess that's a fair time to do it after Wandering Wolf finished their wonder. So in terms of culture, Dazzy is a little bit ahead, but that's really close. Also, obviously, way too early in the game to really worry about culture. As for science, I am in the lead with science with 5 production, and Wandering Wolf is second, followed by Dazzy and then Little Squirrel. However, Little Squirrel and Wandering Wolf are tied with rock production, and Little Squirrel is going to have more rocks when they finish Machu Picchu. Dazzy and me are definitely behind in rocks. And as for food, Wandering Wolf and Little Squirrel have the advantage in food thanks to the irrigations. As for civil actions, I think Wandering Wolf and I are in the lead there, whereas Dazzy is next with the Monarchy, and Little Squirrel's on Theocracy, so they have the fewest. So overall, I definitely was liking my position at this current point in time. I liked having so many civil actions. I liked having Leonardo going with my alchemies, and the Silk Road. I felt, even though I was going to have to upgrade to Coals and Selective Breeding, the Silk Road plus yellow cards was going to make that a lot easier. So I was definitely happy with my position, and I thought that I had great chances of finishing first or second, but obviously a lot of game left to play. Dazzy reveals the strategic territory, and I was willing to bid 4 on this, which is a Knight plus 2 bonus cards. Obviously, I would have loved to bid it for 3 and be able to ship my warrior away to it, but I thought that the territory, especially here at the beginning of Age 2, was powerful enough that I was still willing to send a Knight away with it, and I was indeed able to win it for 4. So that was fortunate for me. The cards I drew off of it were Ravages of Time, a bonus card, and an aggression. Ravages of Time, I think, a very lucky draw. It's Stonehenge. I mean, losing the Happy Face is annoying, but it's not the end of the world. Whereas Little Squirrel would lose Machu Picchu, huge loss. Wandering Wolf would have to lose Pyramids probably, or maybe Universalitas, huge loss. And Dazzy would have to lose Roman Roads, which I think is definitely worse than losing. Well, not definitely, but I do think the yellow token is more valuable than the Happy Face. So I think that this is a great draw for me, so I was extra happy to win that colony. Dazzy, in the meantime, takes the iron, and thanks to the Rich Land, is able to upgrade all 3 this turn. I think that's strong. Seems like a good turn to me. I do see that Ravages, like I said previously, even though I'm weakest, I thought that Ravages was such a strong card for me that I was, that I wanted it in the deck. Yeah. And I end up revealing a Confucius event, so I wasn't hit by a strength event. Maybe I should have held back a little because I am going to at least get stronger than Dazzy, but you could also say that most of these events were seeded by Dazzy, I think. You know, we can't, I think one of them is my cultural influence, so, but the point is that, I think a lot was seeded by Dazzy, and Dazzy was not putting a huge amount of effort into getting strongest, so there's maybe another reason that I feel like there might not be that many strength events in the deck. Maybe it would have been better to hold back the card, but also, you know, maybe Dazzy would have got stronger. Anyway, I do rebuild a knight so that I'm stronger than Dazzy at least. And I take a Frugality, for a very specific reason. So next turn I'll have 4 food, and I want to be able to pop twice so that I'll have a happy worker that I can put into a 3rd knight and play my tactic. And so, this Frugality, thanks to Silk Road, will give me 3 food. So next turn I'll have 4, plus 3 is 7, which is just enough to pop twice. So I think this is a very powerful Frugality for me. Definitely a good card to take here. As for the other things to spend my civil actions on, I also take the Sufficient upgrade. I think this is also a good card for me, obviously, because now I for sure am going to have to depend on coals. So the cheaper I can upgrade my coal mines, the better. I think what I question probably is this one, where again, I feel like I'm being a little bit fast and loose with my civil action in this game, where I take this Sufficient upgrade for 3 civil actions. I think this is a lot more questionable, especially with Silk Road being here. I had enough rocks to be able to build 1 stage of the Silk Road and then build a knight next turn. I think that probably would have been better than taking this efficient upgrade for 3 civil actions. Now I could say, what would I do with my remaining 2 civil actions? I can't pop because I need that food for the Frugality. But I think that this reserves also would have been nice because it would have helped me finish the Silk Road early. I guess taking reserves 1 for 2 does feel worse than taking efficient upgrade for 3, though. So maybe that's wrong. But it does, and you know, I think had some hopes of getting architecture and being able to finish these 3 stages for 1 civil action. I guess it's debatable. Yeah. Anyway, I just got the tactic I won't need anymore as one's aggression. I draw a defensive army tactic, possibly the one I'm least set up for, as well as a wealthy territory. This I was glad to see because I was looking forward to, I mean, whenever Suez is in the game, you always want to keep one eye on it, especially with Cook also in the game. And with me already having won 2 colonies, I think the Suez is already a strong wonder for me. And now with having a colony in my hand, definitely a strong wonder. So with Suez being so strong, that also, maybe that's also encourages me to try to finish Silk Road as soon as possible. So I'll have an open space for it. Little Squirrel Seeds reveals my cultural influence. Finally finishes the Machu Picchu. I shouldn't say finally, I mean I haven't finished my Silk Road. That's unfair to Little Squirrel. Wandering Wolf upgrades 1 alchemy. Takes like Team Sports and the Constitutional Monarchy. Unfortunately, this takes up other civil actions, so they aren't able to upgrade the 2nd alchemy. That said, both of these are definitely important, strong cards, especially the Kanman, but Team Sports also, they will need a Happy Face solution at some point. So even though they're missing out on the science, which is bad, they also, if they, for example, take the Kanman and then upgraded 1, they would have to maybe take one of these cards with their last civil action, not, none of them. And they could take the Wooden Circuses instead of the Team Sports, but it's a much worse card, so I understand this play. Dazi Seeds, even though they're weakest, also possibly suggesting there aren't many strength events, at least in this event deck. Reveals an Immigration, which Dazi wins. Builds a second arena to match main strength. Takes, as well as taking some yellow cards. Doesn't have a lot of science production, and probably, I guess, and also these cards are all available for 3. So I understand this, even though it's a lot of yellow cards to take. But at least they'll be able to get those yellow cards out quickly. I seeded the Wealthy Territory. Okay, I think it makes sense to seed when I'm tied in strength with Dazi, so I'm not weakest. But I think maybe in retrospect, seeing the Wealthy Territory was too risky with Suez Canal being in the deck, being in the game, and being such a strong window for me. I think I should have kept the Wealthy Territory to make sure I have something for Suez Canal. So I think I should have seeded the Call to Arms instead, which it looks like I should be in a pretty good position for with my heavy cavalry tactic. So I think that was definitely a mistake. Potentially a game-losing mistake, actually. That was really bad on me. I don't know why I did it. Anyway, I reveal Rebellion, which hits Little Squirrel and Wandering Wolf, particularly bad for Little Squirrel because they're only on 2 civil actions. So that was definitely lucky timing for me, because after this turn I will have an unhappy worker myself. So the event deck has been extremely kind to me this game, for sure. I do that play I mentioned previously, when I'm able to increase my population twice and build a knight so I can get my heavy cavalry. That makes me the strongest. I also take the Colt. So I think all of these actions are definitely right. I do, even though I probably will be able to get a copy of Cole next turn because none of my opponents have a reason to take it. Actually, looking at it now, I think this Cole is a mistake because all of my opponents have Iron Mines. So basically, in order for me to lose access to the Cole, 2 of my opponents probably would have to cut it. I mean, maybe they could contrive to get the Cole to be discarded after Dazi's turn, but after the Rebellion hit, especially, that looks very unlikely. So I think taking this here was a mistake because it should be available for 1 civil action on my next turn. I think a better turn for me would have been to take this Selective Breeding, then taking a rich land to help with the upgrades, and built another stage of the Silk Road. Especially if I kept the Wealthy Territory. As stated previously, I should be looking to finish this as soon as possible, so I'll have an open space for the Silk Road. So I think there was no reason to take the Coal this turn, and that was a big mistake on my part. This was not a very well played turn for me. I just got the tactic I won't use, and I luckily am not punished for seeding that colony. I draw another colony, a better one, in fact, probably to feed to the Suez Canal and develop territory too. And as well as a tactic that am actually set up to using on Conquistadors. So this is a very, very good draw for me. Little Squirrel Seeds reveals a foray. So again, order of the event deck is being kind to me. As soon as I become strongest, the foray is revealed. So can't complain about the order of the event deck cards on this game, at least so far. Little Squirrel spends their turn building a temple and a swordsman. I'm not so sure about this temple. Rebellion is already out, so there's no reason to be afraid of unhappy workers. Kinda feels like wasting a civil action to me, especially since it's not even getting Little Squirrel out of corruption, and they potentially could have used that civil action on maybe playing the alchemy or something. So I do question this play a little bit. Wandering Wolf Seeds reveals a historic territory. I was definitely happy to bid on this, especially with looking forward to Suez. And I can get rid of this warrior that I'm not using right now. 3 is kind of a perfect bid for me, as a matter of fact. The Happy Face will also actually be quite useful for me because it frees up this population. So actually, the Historic is a very high value for me in this situation. Well, I don't know about very high value, but it's a good colony. Anyway, Wandering Wolf it builds the arena, takes the revolutionary idea. For similar reasons, a Little Squirrel, I'm not so sure about this. Rebellion's already out. This population being unhappy doesn't really matter anymore. I feel like upgrading this alchemy would have been a better use of their turn to get an extra science. It is true that this arena gives them +2 strength, but that doesn't make them strongest either. So I think that upgrading the alchemy would have been better for Wandering Wolf. And then maybe taking urban growth, or just played the team sports preemptively, or played the cartography or something. Wandering Wolf, I guess, takes strength notably. Maybe they have knowledge of something. I'm not sure what going from 10 to 12, because it doesn't make them strongest. They probably have knowledge of something. Anyway, Dazzy Seeds reveals a Pestilence. Seeds, even though they're weakest notably, so they really wanted a card in the next deck. Dazzy then takes the chance cards on the railroad, and thanks to Masonry is able to finish it immediately. So that's a good turn from Dazzy. It does not make them strongest, because they lost a warrior to the Pestilence, which was unfortunate for Dazzy, but it does at least protect them from aggressions, and you know, just gives them more strength and a bit extra resource income. So I think this turn makes sense from Dazzy. There's probably not, I mean, they really want a scientific method, but it's not on the row. Selective breeding is on the row for 3 civil actions, and they should be able to get it next turn, because I already have one, and the other 2 opponents have irrigation, so yeah. Good turn. As I mean, I see that call to arms, you know, it looks like I should be in a pretty good position, especially since I'll be taking the strategy this turn to not be hit by the call to arms. And I did want to seed while I'm, you know, second strongest and everything. I reveal developed territory. Unfortunately, I am not able to bid on this because I would not be able to replace my knight. So Little Squirrel is able to win it just for a swordsman. So I'm not happy to see that, but what can you do? Now what I do is I upgrade a farm. The reason being, I know that there's a wealthy territory that I seeded in here, and I wanted to be able to bid on it. And as we saw previously, I was not able to bid on the developed territory because I couldn't rebuild the knight. So by upgrading this farm, I'll have 3 food next turn, which will be enough to increase my population and rebuild a knight that I put into the wealthy territory. So this was the right play. The question is what else to do with my turn. And what I end up doing is I take the strategy. I think it's a strong card. I definitely have the science for it. And it's just a very good card all around, especially with me having seeded the call to arms. At this point, I think I kind of gave up on the architecture, or at least, again, knowing just how strong Suez was for me. I wanted to get this stage of the Silk Road built preemptively so that I would be in a better position to grab a Silk Road. This lets me potentially finish the Silk Road and get the Suez if it's in this slot of the row, for example. With my last level action, though, I play the strategy to make me strongest, which I think is good. I chose to do this instead of, for example, playing up a coal, but I think being strongest is probably better, especially since upgrading the coal would have required me to use this rich land without Silk Road, which is not a big deal. I probably, you know, I have enough yellow cards that I probably will reach a turn where I'll use twice on a turn anyway, but I think becoming strongest in this situation is still better than getting the coal upgrade a turn earlier, especially since it would have cost an extra civil action. So doing it this way gives me another stage on the Silk Road, which as stated previously will make it a bit easier for me to take a Suez. I draw an Acceptance of Supremacy, an Emigration, and a Cold War. 2 interesting events to seed. International Trade Agreements is offered to Wandering Wolf and accepted. Always disappointing not to be a party to this, but it happens, obviously. Little Squirrel builds a journalism to finally get some good science protection. I mean, it looks like they lost a lab to the... Oh yeah, I forgot to mention when I lost to... well, I lost an idle worker to the Pestilence. Little Squirrel lost a lab to Pestilence, valued these swordsmen higher for understandable reasons, and they decided to replace the lab basically with a library. So the journalism is a strong card. On the other hand, this also, Little Squirrel is still in corruption. We can see the 4th level actions are really a real drain on Little Squirrel's position right now. Wandering Wolf Seeds reveals the Ravages of Time that I seeded. I was happy to see this. Again, I think it hits me the least out of all my opponents. Wandering Wolf interestingly chooses to destroy the Universitas instead of the Pyramids, valuing the civil action over the science. I think usually, you know, the Universitas is a bit better, especially since But Wandering Wolf, when they lose Saladin, will only have 6 civil actions after the Kanman. 7 is a lot better, so I can understand it from that perspective. Also, can understand it because Wandering Wolf is getting the Harvard College now, so even though they're losing the science from the Universitas, they're going to gain it back from the Harvard College. So that also makes sense. Anyway, they also increased the population and upgrade that lab that they mentioned in their last turn. And they build a knight to get a bit more strength. Dazi doesn't siege. Instead, they take a selective breeding and get some field upgrades, farm upgrades going, which is definitely good for them. Rebuild a warrior so they're not weakest anymore. Looks like a good turn to me. I see that's the Cold War. Again, I was looking at this point like I should be able to win the Cold War, but this colony reveal is maybe different. The autonomous territory, probably the best colony in the game. Definitely one that I really like. Now, it's a bit of a question how much I wanted to bid, because I could bid 6 with 2 knights and a bonus card, or more if I bid all 3 of my knights. And I think I actually valued this autonomous territory enough that I went all in with it. I think in retrospect, this was probably a bit too much, though. I mean, we can see with 7, that's an awkward amount for me. I basically end up sitting 10 with my 3 knights. I think maybe I should have just stuck with 6. Let Little Squirrel win it for 7, especially when I know that the last territory in that deck is a wealthy territory. Now, it is true that the autonomous territory is good with my monarchy, getting me from 6 to 7, but I think this is too much, especially in my position where I can't... Not only can I not really rebuild them anytime soon, but I also have a lot that I want to spend my rocks on. You know, I have these cool upgrades to do my farm upgrades. We have the Suez is also on the road that I won't be able to take it this turn. I guess another reason I wanted to win it is because I wanted to lessen the chances that maybe Little Squirrel in particular would take the Suez. But also, again, the next card I know is a wealthy territory, so if Little Squirrel wins the wealthy territory, they'll still have a little bit more of an incentive to take the Suez. So I think this was an overbid on my part, and I was valuing the autonomous territory a bit too highly. Even though it is a very strong territory, it's probably not strong enough to justify this bid. I do take rocks with it, though, because, again, I have so much that I want to spend my rocks on. And even if I took food, I wouldn't be able to rebuild my army. Now, I am at least able to defend myself, thanks to the bonus card that I kept and all of my military actions. So that's not a concern. But I am weakest, which, again, I also just seeded the Cold War. Although it'll be a little while before the Cold War is revealed. But it also might be a little while before I get my army back going, so... Anyway, let's move on from that discussion. I do, build a coal mine and finish the Silk Road, so I choose not to take the Suez this turn. I just couldn't find a great way to do it. I mean, I could have done it instead of, for example, playing the coal and upgrading once. But I also felt that Wandering Wolf has a wonder slot full. Dazi already has 3 wonders, also no colonies. So I thought that, and Wandering Wolf also has no colonies. So I thought that of my opponents, Little Squirrel is the only one who could potentially take the Suez Canal. It would also take up most of their turn, taking 3 civil actions. And Little Squirrel also is having serious corruption issues. So I felt that it was probably unlikely that my opponents would take the Suez. It probably wouldn't be that useful for them. It would only good for them. It would be a strict denial for me. So because of that, I was pretty comfortable waiting on the Silk Road and expecting that it would be available for me next turn. Another reason I didn't take it is I really wanted this copy of Rifleman. It is the first copy, but I mean, the card is going to be in demand. Both Wandering Wolf and Dazi could use it. And the Rifleman is important for me because my H2 tactic is looking like it'll probably be Conquistadors. So another reason not to take the Suez this turn is because I think the Rifleman is also a very important card for me. And again, I do expect the Suez to be available for me. I draw another territory as well as an aggression and another bonus card. Little Squirrel Seeds reveals that worthy territory. I was willing to bid my unit plus 2 of my bonus cards, but it's not enough. Little Squirrel's able to win it. Again, I think I put too much into the autonomous. Anyway, Little Squirrel is able to win the wealthy territory, increase the population 3 times, builds a second library, as well as a 3rd swordsman, Forest Swordsman, and thanks to the wealthy territory, they are well, not just to the wealthy territory, but yeah, they're out of corruption too, finally. And they're also strongest. Wandering Wolf doesn't seed, plays the revolutionary idea, builds a third farm to get some more population going, builds one station at Harvard College, plays Kanman, takes Bach as their H2 leader, even though they don't have operas yet, but and there's only one copy left in the deck, so maybe a little bit of a risky choice for a leader. And they also take the cannon. Jazzy Seeds reveals the call to arms that I see. That unfortunately that ends up hitting me, but maybe it's not a huge deal to lose to it either with getting more H2 draws, but obviously not ideal. Another reason not to have bid so much into the autonomous. Jazzy takes Nobel and builds a cannon. Since I drew defensive army, that perhaps suggests that Jazzy has fortifications in their hand. Maybe also Napoleonic army. Though that would be ambitious for Jazzy. Anyway, I was definitely one of the Suez Canal. Obviously, an extremely, ridiculously strong wonder for me in this situation. No reason not to take it. Only question has to do with my remaining civil actions. And I end up building a second knight to get a little bit more strength. Jazzy was a little bit threatening, so even though I'm still weakest, I think it's good to do this to get a little bit higher. And I spend my last civil action to upgrade another coal mine. I think this is a pretty natural turn. So, you know, some of these yellow cards would also be useful, but I think that they're also not needed. I have enough rocks next turn to finish the Suez Canal and also upgrade my last coal mine with efficient upgrades. So I think there's no reason to take these cards. Well, there is a reason, but I think there's not a strong reason. I discard. I have so many events in my cards in my hand. I'm not going to go into detail on each one, but basically I discarded the events that I was likely not to want. I keep my tactic. I keep the colonies and the events that look better for me. In particular, the happy face events, because of how strong my yellow bank was and was going to be, thanks to the thanks to the developed territory that I was going to get with the Suez. I do draw another territory, the vast territory, as well as some aggressions. Little Squirrel Seeds reveals a good harvest. That helps me the least. Takes a cannon for 3 civil actions. The Little Squirrel really wants that cannon. Makes sense, though. It's an important card, but it also means that they will be in corruption again. Wandering Wolf Seeds reveals vast territory. This one I am not able to win. Wasn't willing to put too much into this one, especially with knowing... Did I know there's another... No, I don't think I know there's another territory. But also knowing that I wasn't going to really need those yellow tokens with me having the developed territory in my hand. Anyway, Jazzy ends up winning it for 2 warriors and 2 bonus cards, which is a good deal for them. Wandering Wolf finishes the Harvard College, takes a breakthrough, and the second copy of Rifleman, which they immediately build 1 more of so that they're able to become strongest. So that turn makes sense to me. Does it increase the population, builds a second cannon and a third cannon, so that's definitely looking like they probably have fortifications in hand. They're able to become the strongest, takes up patriotism, plays reserves for food, notably, even though they already have a lot of food saved up, perhaps they're planning on getting the Red Cross Wonder. I don't see it, I'm weakest, and I'm not going to be weakest after my turn, as we'll see. I play the Theology preemptively because the age is going to end before my next turn, so I want to get that out before I lose it. I will actually need the Happy Faces. I mean, maybe at some point, yeah, so good to have it there. I think worth it to science and the civil action just to make sure I have a Happy Face solution if I need it. So I build a Rifleman and play my Conquistadors, and I also take Napoleon as my leader. I think I wasn't really in a position to take a leader until now, probably, but Napoleon is definitely a good leader for me. I was pretty confident in my position, as we'll talk about a bit later, with me having a huge Suez. So I thought Napoleon helping me with my strength would be best, better than these leaders would be, especially since he's available right now for 1 civil action. I'll take the architecture to help. Now, one cost of playing the Rifleman this turn, though, is that I am missing... Yeah, it means that I won't be able to... I choose not to finish the Suez Canal this turn. I think I think I went through iterations of my turn with finishing Suez Canal, and I think that I probably couldn't find one that would also let me build this rifleman and maybe play, because it would cost 4 civil actions to finish the Suez Canal. Well, I could still play the rifleman. Yeah, I'm not gonna spend a long time going into this turn to figure out what the turn of finishing the Suez Canal would have looked like, but I think looking at this now, I should have found a way to finish the Suez Canal this turn, because obviously, getting the extra 5 resource production is more important than getting the extra 2 resource production from upgrading the mine this turn. So I think that was a mistake on my end. And I take an urban growth instead of upgrading my last farm too. I mean, this will probably be useful for me, maybe in H3 or something, but yeah, this is another turn where I'm looking in retrospect and kind of questioning my decision making. I feel like there should have been a better way to go about this. Oh well. Draw an arms industry and 2 aggressions. Little Squirrel builds a knight, destroys a lab to build a second knight, adopting the fighting tactic, tying them in strength with me. Winning Wolf Seeds reveals the Cold War. Thankfully, I was able to get strong enough to win this Cold War. That's another important reason to get strongest. So, anyway, Wandering Wolf takes the Wave of Nationalism and the reserves and the architecture, so it gets a lot of rock cards. Upgrades 2 Riflemen, still the weakest, perhaps for the wave, but not at risk of aggressions anymore, and is now not the weakest after building the knights, and takes yet another reserves. Perhaps with Harvard College, Wandering Wolf should have played the Wave of Nationalism this turn. Anyway, H3 begins. Dazzy builds a 4th cannon, builds a 5th cannon, definitely highly suggesting fortifications in his hand, takes that scientific method as well as a cavalryman natively. Perhaps they actually have, I mean, maybe they have a mobile artillery, but then they might have played the cavalryman instead of building more cannons. So probably they have fortifications, and maybe they're just taking this for a potential mechanized army. Even though I'm not sure I did see which card was that? That was Emigration, right? I was pretty confident in my happy faces, so I felt that Emigration was a safe seed for me. I reveal a strategic territory. I think I tried to win this, especially with Suez Canal, but Little Squirrel ended up winning it instead with a 3-unit bid. So a costly win for Little Squirrel at least. I only bid, I think, 1 unit, yeah, because oh yeah, I think it was because on my turn, right, I really wanted to finally get the Suez Canal, so I didn't have enough rocks to rebuild my rifleman. I would only have enough rocks to rebuild a knight, so that's why I only bid the knight plus 2 bonus cards. Anyway, I do spend the Suez on developed territory. I mean, vast is defensible, but I think I have enough yellow tokens just with developed, and with only 5 science production, and also with the card that I'll discuss in a second, I really wanted that science. And, you know, finally upgrade my second farm. So I think all of this is a natural play. The question is what to do with my last 3 civil actions. And I think I didn't really want any of these H2 cards. I want to take one of these H3 cards. And I think all of them are justifiable. Tanks, obviously, for tactics could be important. Movies, just for something to put my rocks into now that I'm getting so many rocks to Suez. And also, Marlena plus Hollywood could be a good thing to aim for. But I actually ended up taking the Democracy. I think, again, it's maybe a little bit of a risky play. Tanks may be a safer play, especially if I'm worried about military pressure from Dazzy, for example. But this early of a Democracy, I'll be able to play it next turn. Also just felt really strong for me. You know, to give me more civil actions with the strategy and the autonomous territory, I'll have more than enough military actions, and I just thought I would be able to get so much culture from the democracy for not a rock cost. And thanks to the developed territory, I felt that I should have enough science to support the democracy. And also, if we look at our opponents, Little Squirrel could definitely really use the democracy. They have the science saved up for it. Wandering Wolf also has the science saved up for it. Dazzy also has the science saved up for it and is still in monarchy. So I thought all of my opponents could probably use the democracy. Whereas, you know, tanks and movies, especially the movies, but also, you know, there's 2 copies of tanks, and maybe I'll still have a decent chance to get one of them. Especially with Dazzy having cavalrymen. I thought that the democracy was a more in-demand technology than these 2. Just got the arms industry, which I think didn't look like it would... no, I don't need extra rocks. My opponents need it more than I do. So, arms industry, I thought that I would almost certainly not cede. I draw a bonus card, a war, and an impact of science. Little Squirrel plays Newton, which, good leader for them with the journalism, obviously, and also helps with the civil action situation. Unfortunately, they're still not able to get out of corruption. Civil action continuing to hurt Little Squirrel a lot. Wandering Wolf Seeds reveals an independence declaration, which hits Little Squirrel sadly. Does Little Squirrel has... Little Squirrel, I mean, they could lose the wealthy territory, but that would also make corruption even harder to get out of. So, definitely an unfortunate event for Little Squirrel. Wandering Wolf does get that second copy of Opera, though, with Bach, so that's good for Wandering Wolf. Perhaps I could have considered cutting the Opera, but no, my turn was 2. My civil actions were 2 in demand. Anyway, Wandering Wolf takes the tanks. Also, there's no way to cut the Opera when Wandering Wolf could have taken the movies, too. Although, movies... Yeah, Wandering Wolf maybe could have considered taking the movies instead of the Opera, because it's still good. They have... And it's a little bit cheaper with the architecture, but it is true that the Opera is significantly cheaper, available for one civil action less than to get this tanks. And they adopt my conquistadors. Dazzy declares a war over territory on Little Squirrel and plays the military theory and is able to build another cannon, builds an arena, and plays their fortification tactics, going up to 49 strength, which is definitely starting to look kind of scary. And Little Squirrel is going to struggle to defend for sure. So, good turn from Dazzy. As for me, I cede. I think that's civil unrest. Again, I was pretty confident in my happy face solution right now. I'm not weakest either, so I felt pretty comfortable ceding. Little prosperity. Unfortunately, this helps me the least out of all players. I do get that early democracy, like I mentioned. But I was also getting pretty scared of Dazzy. Dazzy was looking pretty threatening at the moment, so I decided to also take this Manhattan Project and finish it. This at least protects me from aggressions from Dazzy and means that I am also a fair bit stronger than my other 2 opponents, so I definitely felt quite a bit safer with this Manhattan Project. However, I am in a bit of an unfortunate situation where after playing the democracy, I am 1 science short of maybe getting the tanks. Now, I don't have a tactic at the moment that needs the tanks, so maybe the tanks aren't a necessary tick for me, and so so maybe the tanks wouldn't be that helpful for me even next turn. But it is still a bit of an unfortunate situation. This is the cost of playing the democracy, obviously. It's a very strong card, but a very science-intensive card. I do take the tanks in my hand, though, because in the future, it definitely might be good for tactics, especially a shock troops I'm pretty well set up for, but also maybe a modern army or something. Yeah, and movies, again, rock sync for me, and also good with Marlena, if I get Marlena. I do discard the vast territory. I felt that I really didn't need yellow tokens. My yellow bank was looking really good, and so I thought it would be much better for my opponents than for me. And I have enough colonies for Suez, so even though I have the bonus cards for it, I thought that it wasn't a necessary card for me. And I draw an Impact of Wonders, which is a seedable impact, as well as a second war and a mechanized army, which is going to be kind of difficult for me to get going, sadly. Little Squirrel defends as best they can with the fundamentalism and the satellites, and building another conquistador's army. So they're able to get a little bit of defense going. Still in corruption though. So actually, yeah, a fair amount, but they're still so they're 14 strength behind, so they'll lose 3 yellow tokens. Could be worse. Wandering Wolf is able to get the first copy of Air Forces, and builds 1 so that they're not vulnerable to aggressions probably, as well as taking a copy of reserves. I forgot to do the state of the game at the beginning of Age 3, sorry, but I think basically at this point in the game, when Age 3 began, I was feeling pretty confident myself because of my huge Suez. I think there's not that much else to say necessarily about the positions. That being said, though, after this turn, I was feeling somewhat less confident because Dazzy does have a war over culture that they declare against me, which, I mean, they probably figure that I was looking the most threatening out of all their opponents, and I am not going to be able to defend against this war this turn, because even with the Suez, I'm only going to be able to get 1 more army going. So this decision definitely makes sense to Dazzy, hitting me with the war before I'm ready, basically. They're able to get up to 60 strength with 2 more cannons. They also play a civil service and take a revolutionary idea and an oil. Notably, the fact that they're taking this oil this late perhaps suggests they have an impact of industry in their hand. Unfortunately, as stated previously, while I see the impact of Wonder, I was kind of hoping that maybe a card will be revealed that'll help me somehow. Unfortunately, it's Immigration, which at least isn't bad for me. It's really bad for Little Squirrel and Wandering Wolf, not for Dazzy, though. And after building a temple, I am able to build 1 more Conquistador's army, putting me at 46 strength, which is a fair bit less than Dazzy. Honestly, looking at this in retrospect, it's not clear to me if I had a better way to protect myself and avoid this potential, I mean, I guess a medium-sized war from Dazzy. Not a small war, not a huge war, medium-sized. Dazzy was looking threatening. Well, I mean, Dazzy had already started building cannons here, but I mean, this turn... Yeah, this turn I was, like, finishing my mines and my Suez. The next turn I did, and yeah, I guess this turn is a questionable one, but, I mean... Was it, though? Because I don't think the tanks would have really helped me that much, even if I had kept the science for them. I think that maybe if I had been open to fundamentalism, but I think Little Squirrel maybe took the fundamentalism, or... I guess the fundamentalism was available on this turn, so instead of developing the democracy, I could have eaten my losses and taken a fundamentalism, for example, instead of playing the technology. So the fundamentalism definitely would have helped me out a little bit. I mean, I still would have lost, though. I just would have lost 6 less culture. But that should have at least been considered. I think I didn't consider that as much as I should have. But I mean, Manhattan Project obviously is good. I did at least protect myself a little bit with that. It feels like I should have had a way to defend myself better than I ended up doing. It also might have just been, like, a culmination of, as I said previously, like, being too goosey with my civil actions. I pointed out previous turns that I could have played differently. So maybe if I had just been faster in getting my economy set up, I would have been in a better position to defend myself against this Dazzy war. Oh well. I do take Marlena. I think, I mean, I have the movies already. She's my personal favorite Age 3 leader. I think her tactic doubling is incredibly strong, so I think it's worth spending even 3 civil actions for her, especially with all the civil actions I have available. I don't play her yet. Better to keep Napoleon for the extra 4 strength. I do take the multimedia. I mean, this last action, I probably won't be playing the multimedias. I mean, maybe, but it's going to be difficult. I guess it's partly a denial. I mean, Little Squirrel doesn't really know there's a second copy. I mean, Wonder Wolf. I mean, maybe if I get a Hollywood. But there's also, maybe there's not a better thing to take. On the other hand, maybe the oil would have been better to take because Dazi taking the oil, I think I didn't register at the time, but Dazi taking the oil is definitely a impact of industry tell. So I think taking the oil to maybe compete on the impact of industry, even though I have coals, would have been better than this multimedia, which I very likely will not play. Just got one war and an aggression. It was not looking likely at all beginning a war going this game, especially with me not knowing if I'll get a copy of Air Forces or if I do get one, when I might. Draw an impact of population. So it's an aggression and bonus card. Little Squirrel sees reveals a national pride that Little Squirrel is able to win thanks to those journalisms. Gets out of, after that one territory, gets out of revolt by destroying a mine and building another temple. This puts Little Squirrel, sadly, at only 2 resource income, but they are able to supplement their rocks with these 2 copies of reserves, as well as this multimedia that looks like they're planning on getting some multimedias in the near future. Wandering Wolf now offers this Loss of Sovereignty pack, definitely a very game-defining pack a lot of the time. This means that Little Squirrel will kind of be able to focus just on upgrading, pushing culture, and not having to worry about strength. I think this is a good pack to offer from Wandering Wolf's perspective, because it definitely looks like beating up on Little Squirrel might be a way for either Dazi or me to really run away with the game. And so by protecting Little Squirrel in this way, Wandering Wolf is able to compete with us more in culture production, which with Bach is perhaps looking favorable to them. Although they are going to have to focus on defending themselves this turn because Dazi is obviously looking incredibly threatening. They're able to get a fair amount of strength going with this modern army, even though it's outdated. They do have to destroy a farm, though, in order to get out of revolt, but they probably won't need that food anyway. I mean, they're in this part of the Yellow Bank now. They also take a copy of computers. They're probably looking forward to getting Einstein or Sid Meier with it. And they take an efficient upgrade for those computers. So Dazi gets 19 culture from me, so again, not a huge war, more like a medium-sized war. Definitely hurts me a fair bit and helps Dazi a fair bit. Now, the Loss of Sovereignty doesn't protect Little Squirrel from aggressions, unfortunately, so Dazi is able to get a plunder off on them, which will help them complete this Red Cross immediately, which gives them an immediate 38 culture, which is quite a lot. So Dazi is definitely looking to be in a dominant position at the moment. After the war in the Red Cross. I see that Impact of Wonders. It's going to be a neutral impact. I want to, get it in, reveal an event on my turn. I reveal freedom of movement. I didn't see a good way. I probably would have preferred it to be revealed next turn after I maybe am able to play a movie and can move something into movies, but oh well. This turn, however, I don't actually play the movies. Instead, I upgrade some farms into mechanized agriculture. Basically, the reason I did this is if you look at my resource situation next turn I'll have 15 with this upgrade. I'll have 15 food next turn. That's just enough to pop 3 times, and I'll have 27 rocks. That'll be just enough to build 3 movies next turn. So with that being the case, I thought that this extra food that I would get was good enough for me to justify upgrading these mechanized agricultures and spending the science on it. Because I didn't want to move. I mean, I could have maybe destroyed the temple or something, but I didn't really. I really wanted this extra pop, especially since I was still scared of wars from Dazi. So this extra pop would help me defend myself against Dazi. I will take a revolutionary idea to enable me to potentially play an Air Forces next turn if one is available for me. So the extra food will help me defend against a potential war, and if there's no wars coming, I will be able to put it into movies. So that's why I valued this food. I also take a patriotism. Again, I was still scared of wars from Dazi. I didn't need this urban growth to build 3 movies next turn. I say that I have just enough rocks to build 3 movies next turn thanks to architecture. So the patriotism was more important. I was also thinking that I might be able to possibly get a war going against Wandering Wolf if he wasn't careful. Maybe this should have been an urban growth, but I think the patriotism is also fine just to be a little bit safer. Dazzy is definitely looking threatening, especially if they're able to get in air forces. I discard. I think the impact of pop wasn't going to be good for me. My opponents all have a lot of pop even after my farm upgrades. I draw an impact of architecture, which might be a suitable impact for me, as well as a peace treaty. Little Squirrel Seeds reveals an inhabited territory. I built a little bit of it, but I'm not really struggling for population at the moment, especially thanks to my farm upgrades. So I wasn't going to put too much into it. Wandering Wolf is able to win it just for one night thanks to all their bonus cards. Little Squirrel now upgrades to multimedia, gets some even more science with Newton. Also takes an urban growth, takes a military theory, even again, they're not to potentially help protect them more from aggressions. Also might be a sign that they see, for example, an impact of progress or something. They also take an urban growth to help them with those multimedias, an efficient upgrade to help with multimedias, and they take the internet. Good. Pretty good wonder for them with multimedias. Wandering Wolf does take Sid Meier, upgrades one computer, plays 2 reserves for rocks. You know, it is looking probably likely that the age will end before Wandering Wolf's turn, so they want to get rid of their age 3 cards and build a rifleman and a knight. So they now have 2 outdated modern armies going to actually become strongest. Dazzy, thankfully, does not war against me. Instead, they siege, revealing a crime wave, which hits me, unfortunately. Dazzy takes Pierre, good leader for them, obviously. Now develops the oil, upgrades 2 mines to oil. They also got 4th mine when I wasn't looking. That must have been from the freedom of movement, right? Again, another very strong tell that Dazzy has an impact of industry that they perhaps already seeded. I see that impact of architecture, and I reveal popularization of science, which at least helps me a little bit against Dazzy, but Wandering Wolf gets the most out of it. Like I said, since Dazzy did not war me, I was now pretty comfortable, especially since so in my turn, you could getting a bunch of population into movies was a little risky, perhaps, because Dazzy maybe was still kind of threatening a war. Well, okay, we'll talk about that in a bit. I do want to do that play mentioned previously, where I can build 3 movies. But I actually give up on the Air Forces, and I build a 3rd movie instead. And here's the reason why. With Engineering Genius, obviously, I did think about this turn and what I wanted to do, because basically, the rest of the game would depend on Little Squirrel, who has the opportunity to end the game on their turn, because they'll be able to take these 4 cards for 1 civil action, and they have enough hand space that they can play, for example, 2 reserves, and they'll have 1, 2. Well, because of Einstein, because they can take Einstein and then play him and without spending a civil action. And that'll free up the hand space so that they'll have just enough that they can take these 4. They only have to take 3 cards, sorry, to end the age, right? So basically, Little Squirrel can pretty easily end the age if they want to, which will end the game if they want to. And so the question is Little Squirrel incentivized to end the age? And I think they are, especially when I do this play, because after this play, I am up to 23 culture production, which is a lot more than all of my opponents, most particularly Little Squirrel. And so if the game lasts another turn cycle, I'll get even more culture production over Little Squirrel. So Little Squirrel's only hope of finishing, maybe potentially first against Dazzy, but also against me. Both Dazzy and me, I think, are benefited significantly from another turn. Whereas Little Squirrel isn't really, because Little Squirrel has relatively little culture production and resource production. So I believed it was in Little Squirrel's interest to end the game this turn, to, try to bank on their culture lead against me without giving me another turn of culture production. And so because I was convinced that the age would end after Little Squirrel's turn, I was confident in not taking this copy of Air Forces, because obviously Wandering Wolf and Dazzy would not have the opportunity to warn me if the game is over after Little Squirrel's turn. So even though that gives Little Squirrel the potential to maybe Little Squirrel doesn't end the age, and then Wandering Wolf or Dazzy warn me, and maybe I won't have a copy of Air Forces and I'll be in trouble, I'm definitely risking that. But because I was so confident that Little Squirrel would end the age, I was comfortable doing play like this, where I was setting myself up to, I need this engineering genius to finish a wonder next turn, if next turn is the last turn in the game. Draw Hotbed War, Impact, and I draw very lucky. If this will indeed be my last draw in the game, this is a very lucky draw because I draw an Impact of Colonies, which obviously will be a very strong impact for me. Little Squirrel Seeds reveals a civil unrest. Doesn't affect anyone. Up to the second multimedia, plays the reserves to take Einstein, and we can see that Little Squirrel does indeed take just enough cards to end the game. So I was right in my prediction. Age 4 begins. Wandering Wolf does an aggression against me. This was a little bit of a tough decision because I do have the ability to defend against this aggression, but then this will open me up against an aggression against Dazzy, which was a little worrying potentially because, you know, this armed intervention wouldn't really mess with my turn. It would just take 7 culture from me. However, first of all, if I remember correctly, I didn't pay close attention, but I believe I had, yeah, we have a plunder. So there's only 1 plunder in the H3 deck. Okay, there's 2 plunders actually, but I might have had knowledge of the second too. I don't recall anymore. But the plunder is the only event. I mean, you know, raid obviously wouldn't be great for me, but the plunder is the only one that would be really bad for me because it would make me be unable to finish a wonder on my turn. But I already have knowledge of at least 1 plunder, maybe the second. But also, because Dazzy has Pierre, Dazzy is presumably going to declare the Olympic Games on their turn. But if they declare the Olympic Games and then they do an aggression against me, they would lose the benefit of Olympic Games. So I figured that that was unlikely, and that Dazzy would most likely just declare the Olympic Games and seed an impact. So I was pretty comfortable. I was comfortable just defending against that aggression. I think I did draw a bonus card on my last turn, which let me defend that aggression, which is obviously also lucky for me. So a very lucky last draw for me in this game. Wandering Wolf is able to go up to 92 strength, though, with upgrading to 2 tanks. Perhaps suggesting that there's an impact of strength or maybe an impact of competition in the deck. Dazzy does indeed declare the Olympic Games and seed. I'm revealing an impact of population that helps Wandering Wolf and Dazzy a bit against me, but it helps me +6 against Little Squirrel. Dazzy upgrades 2 lands to oils. Again, very obvious that there's impact of industry in the deck. Oh, I forgot to mention Wandering Wolf's turn. Wandering Wolf took Hollywood without finishing it. So this was a pretty blatant hate draft against me, especially since it cost Dazzy, Wandering Wolf, being able to elect Sid Meier, thus losing 3 culture. So I was a little annoyed to see this, but from Wandering Wolf's perspective, it does make sense. Dazzy is looking likely to win the game at this point. So if Wandering Wolf is going to survive in the tournament, they're probably going to have to beat both me and Little Squirrel. So they probably figured by taking this wonder, they were denying me access to Hollywood, and just hoping that the impacts would carry them against the Little Squirrel. So from Wandering Wolf's perspective, maybe they also just didn't see a better use of their civil actions too than what they did. I mean, they could have, again, elected Sid Meier, maybe built another theater or a lab or something, so they could have definitely increased their culture production a little bit. They also leave fast food chains available for me, which is not as good as Hollywood would be, but still pretty good. Perhaps they were hoping that Dazzy would cut the fast food chains for me, but Dazzy does not, thankfully for me. Instead, they, again, upgrade the oils and the computers. I definitely wanted to see that impact of colonies. I revealed impact of happiness, which is a good impact for me. This last turn for me, I think, is quite straightforward. Nothing can possibly be as good as finishing this fast food chains. I do have just enough rocks to build 1 warrior, which will give me an extra +1 culture from the fast food chains. I end up getting 23, which is a decent amount. And Little Squirrel Seeds reveals that Impact of Wonders that I seeded. It ends up being, yeah, actually a beneficial impact for me, which is nice, and really helps me against Little Squirrel 2 in particular, which could definitely be important, because Little Squirrel, despite kind of, I think, struggling through a lot of the game, actually ended up, partially thanks to the Loss of Sovereignty Pact, having a fair amount, a pretty large amount of culture. Anyway, Little Squirrel plays the military theory and the engineering, giving them 6 from Einstein and also an extra 4 from the Nobel Prize. And they are able to finish the internet for 17 culture, which is at least less than the amount that I got from the fast food chains. So, before the final impact, we can take a look at the standings. Dazzy, despite the war against me, I ended up being able to catch up a fair amount thanks to the 3 movies with Marlena, as well as the fast food chains winner. So I'm actually only 4 culture behind Dazzy and 16 above Little Squirrel. Wandering Wolf is definitely looking like our position is pretty hopeless, but Little Squirrel could potentially overtake me or Dazzy depending on how the final impacts go. And also the winner is going to be a little up in the air. So it'll be exciting to see the last impacts. The first one is the impact of architecture that I seeded, so that is a good impact for me. Puts me actually 2 culture above Dazzy. The next impact, though, is the impact of technology, which is a pretty bad impact for me, especially relative to Little Squirrel. Little Squirrel is now not only is Dazzy ahead of me, Little Squirrel is only 10 culture behind me, so I was sweating at this point. Next is the impact of progress. This is another impact that is good for Little Squirrel. I think I maybe mentioned previously, Little Squirrel might have had the impact of progress with the military theory that was taken. They are now only 2 culture behind me, and I am 2 culture behind Dazzy. So despite the way that things were looking maybe through a lot of Age 3, at this point, the top 3 positions are extremely close. The next impact, though, is the impact of colonies that I drew on my last turn. So this gives me a lot of breathing room against a Little Squirrel. Also puts me ahead of Dazzy, although if we were right about the impact of industry, which indeed we were, that is going to give Dazzy a whole ton of culture, 16 against me. That is going to put Dazzy in the lead. At least it gives me 5 against Little Squirrel. So at this point, I was feeling pretty confident at least I would finish second. And the last one is an impact of competition, which also benefits Dazzy a lot. Looks like it was probably seeded by Wandering Wolf, who benefits the most, but thankfully it's not enough for Little Squirrel to exceed me, and I actually end up losing this game by 19 points, but also being second by 19. I was obviously happy to finish second in this game and survive in the tournament. That's the most important point. That being said, it did kind of feel that with my huge Suez Canal, I was a little bit disappointed that I wasn't able to carry the win. That war that Dazzy declared earlier against me was decisive in determining who won this game. I think that looking back at it now, yeah, probably the 2 or so turns before that war weren't really my mistake. My mistake was turns before that, where I dilly-dallied with my civil actions and, didn't get the Silk Road going early enough, didn't get the Suez Canal going early enough. And because of that, I wasn't in a strong enough economic position to be able to seriously contest Dazzy's war. If I had played those Age 2 and late Age 1 turns better, I think my economy would have been better, and maybe I would have been able to potentially resist Dazzy's war. But again, what's important in Australian Open is to at least finish second, and for the 3rd round in a row, I did finish second, so I'm able to move on to the next round. As for the other 2 opponents, Little Squirrel, I think, Ages 1 and 2, especially late Age 1 and early Age 2, were pretty rough for Little Squirrel, where they had corruption for multiple turns, were stuck on 4 civil actions with theocracy. They're also kind of unlucky. I mean, I was definitely really fortunate in terms of the event deck order, especially in the first 2 event decks. That's undeniable. And I think maybe that it was pretty harsh for Little Squirrel. That being said, I think Little Squirrel's biggest issue was being stuck on 4 civil actions for most of the game, which made it extremely difficult for Little Squirrel to get out of corruption and really spend their resources effectively and get the cards that they needed to get. As for Wandering Wolf, I think that Wandering Wolf, I didn't notice necessarily huge mistakes from Wandering Wolf through most of the game. And I think there was that one turn where I said maybe they should have upgraded the alchemy, but I don't think that was a huge mistake. I guess for Wandering Wolf, it was just they didn't. I think they were in a pretty decent position at the beginning of Age 3. They just weren't able to find a way to convert their position into culture. They had Bach, but they only ended up getting 2 operas, and I think also relatively late. I think they had to respond to Dazzie's military pressure, notably. So I think they weren't able to find a way to respond to Dazzie's military pressure while also building up culture. And because of that, they ended up finishing 4th. Still, though, overall, I think this was an interesting game and a well-played game by everyone. Dazzy definitely deserved the win. I think they played well and managed to, like I said, really warm me before I was ready. So I think that was impressive of Dazzy and a valuable game for me to go back and review, and hopefully an interesting game for you all to watch. So I think I do plan to cover however many remaining games I have in the Australian Open. Maybe only one more game, we'll see. But however many, I do want to finish covering my Australian Open for as long as it lasts. But until that happens, I will definitely be getting some World Championship videos for you soon, so you can compare them to the videos that Weidenbaum is making. Should be interesting, I think, to get multiple perspectives on these games. Until then, though, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you in the next one.